numbers. And let's get chatting with Ms. Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, the CMD of Biocon. Biocon posted, remember, a rather good set of numbers. Hi, Ms. Shaw. Thanks so much for joining in today. Well, revenue growth was spectacular, 29% on the top line. I wanted to focus on the biologic segment. That's your insulins as well as your biosimilar business. That's showing some good growth. What's the trajectory going ahead? What kind of growth numbers can we look at? Because this year itself, on a year-on-year basis, it's a whopping 60%.
Yeah, as you know, we've just announced that our Malaysia facility has been commercialized, has commenced commercial operations, and this means that going forward, Malaysia will be able to contribute to insulin sales. As you know, we've always been very challenged with complete utilization of our India facility, so this will actually add to our future sales in insulins. The offtake agreement that we signed with Malaysia is a big milestone for us. So this is very important, an announcement that we made this morning. But in addition to that, I think what we also wanted to continue to do is to basically deliver on our other biologics. Our trastuzumab sales have been ramping up. And you know that we've also announced the acceptance of our biosimilar trastuzumab dossier by US FDA. That's another significant milestone for us. And I think this coming fiscal is going to be a very important fiscal for us because there are potential approvals that we can expect in many emerging markets and possibly even from EMA. So I think this is going to be a very exciting time for Biocon and Mylan, and we expect that our biologics performance is going to continue to ramp up in the years ahead.
Good morning, ma'am, and congratulations once again. If you could just tell us, how much do you think the Malaysian facility could contribute by way of revenues in the coming calendar year, now that you've started the commercialization of it? And secondly, you made a reference to, some of the potential approvals from, EMA, etc. Could you give us some more details on that?
Well, I can only comment on the fact that we have actually disclosed the offtake agreement value, which is 300 million ringgit, which in dollar terms translates to approximately $75 million over a 3-year period, extendable by another additional 2 years. But, suffice to say that, there are other opportunities of commercial supplies from Malaysia coming from emerging markets, and we are on track to be inspected by some of these emerging market regulators, after which we can start supplying from Malaysia to these markets as well. And I think this is a very important, signal, because I think Malaysia will cater to some of the challenges we've had of catering from India, which is completely maxed out in terms of supplies. So I think these are very, very important signals that I can share with you at this point in time. In terms of regulatory approvals, it's very difficult for me to make any comments because regulatory approvals are very sensitive, and we are just hoping that we might get some approvals later this year from EMA, but that's up to regulatory reviews and approvals thereof.
Well, ma'am, you were talking about trastuzumab. That's clearly the big talking point, and that's what analysts really are looking at very, very closely. But Roche, they have gone ahead and they've started trials of Affinity. The street is a bit worried. Will that be eating into some kind of market share? Your take on the same?
There's going to be a lot of analyst and market speculation, but it remains to be seen what impact it will have on trastuzumab, because trastuzumab is a very important molecule. There are going to be a lot of pricing discussions around any new molecule, and I think trastuzumab continues to be a very, very important therapy for breast cancer patients. And depending on what the data looks like for other molecules, I'm very confident that trastuzumab will continue to have a very, very important market opportunity as a biosimilar.
Okay. You're also gearing up for the commercial launch of your cholesterol-lowering pill, Cresta generic. We know it's got a huge opportunity, but how much could Biocon actually realize? Any early estimates of that, ma'am?
I would say it's not going to be as large an opportunity as it has been for other companies that have had a 180-day exclusivity. We were not the first to file in terms of rosuvastatin generic. So I would say that it's just an opening, of our generics innings, I would say. It's not going to be significant in terms of revenues or profitability. But the fact is that we are supplying rosuvastatin API to many of these companies for the US market. So I think, as a company, I don't think this is going to be a huge needle mover in terms of generics business, but just that it's the first off the table, so to speak.
All right, ma'am, I wanted to ask you about the Middle East. I remember quite a few quarters ago, that was a bit of a niggling worry. So what's going on that front? Have things recovered over there? That's point number one. And just looking through your numbers, your branded formulation sales, that's up only around 18%. I mean, 18% is not a small number, but in comparison to everything else, that's appearing like it's a bit of a drag. What's the trajectory out there?
Yeah, so I think branded formulations has been a challenging business for us, largely on account of leadership issues. We've basically put into place some of these concerns. I think we have a good head of branded formulations who has just assumed his responsibilities a few months ago. So we're expecting a turnaround to happen really next fiscal. So yes, a bit disappointing in terms of branded formulations, but in the overall scheme of things, I think there's so much going on in the business that branded formulations will take some time to pick up. But I think there are many other segments that are really, buffering the impact of slightly slower trajectory for branded formulations.
Okay. All right, ma'am. We'll leave it at that. Thanks again for joining in. That's